Welcome to the ATM Digital Transformation Summit. Thank you all for being here. Let me just introduce myself. My name is Paul Richer, and I run a management consultancy called Genesis Digital Transformation. So we work around the globe, actually. I was just saying my furthest flung client's actually New Zealand, which I'm from London, so it's right around the other side of the globe. We work around the world advising travel companies of all kinds and tourism organizations on how to move forward in the digital world. So if you've got any problems, come and speak to me. You can see my website there, www.genesis.net. So you can take a look at that and see what we do. I've organized the ATM Digital Transformation Summit this morning for the next 2 hours, just to try and give you some input to what's happening in the world of online travel, digital travel as we now call it. And the way I've organized the next 2 hours, we're going to have one presentation from Benyo from Prism, who'll be talking about digital transformation in the Middle East. We'll be hearing from Richard from What 3 Words about their special kind of geographical segmentation of the world. And then we'll have 3 speakers talking about the digital transformation of travel and a panel session. After all the presentations, there'll be the chance for you to ask questions of the speakers. So if any questions come to mind, then just keep a note of them and I'll make sure you've got time to ask those questions. If you don't want to make notes of the presentations, I've asked the speakers, and they've all said that, apart from our last speaker, that you can have copies of their presentations. So on your way out, if you leave your business card with Natalia at the back, or the young lady who's scanning you in, I will drop you an email when those presentations come online. So you don't need to take notes, all taken care of. You can relax, and I'll send you the presentations. If you're not very good with English language, I'm afraid they're not translated. I think they're all in English, so sorry about that. I'm sure you can put a PowerPoint into Google nowadays and say, please translate. I'm sure it comes out in many languages. Maybe we're not quite there yet. So any questions so far? Is everybody happy about that? Yes? That's great. So let me introduce our first speaker. He's Benyo. He's Benyo van Laarhoven. He's Chief Executive Officer of Prism. He's going to be talking about the digital transformation of online travel in the Middle East. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome him.
Thank you, Richard. Paul, thanks for the introduction. And I would like to, first of all, congratulate you all to be here at 10:30 on the second day of ATM after the first parties on the Monday night. I'm overwhelmed with the number of people I see because I've been on those, tech shows on the second morning, and we would have like 3 or 4 people. So apparently, we have raised, your attention. Digital transformation is big. I mean, just look outside. I mean, this is, I don't know how many square meters of just pure travel tech companies. If you all would have been here at ATM 5 or 10 years ago, it would have fitted in 10 or maybe 15 booths here. And we would be looking at dancing Thai girls and Filipinos showing the beauty of the Philippines. Right now, people are here to see, if I want to buy something, can I buy it online? How does it work? So if you look at my opening slide, digital transformation in the GCC, should I actually be putting GCC there? Besides the fact of what is GCC and what is Middle East, but do we need to have geographies linked to digital transformation? Because it's a global thing. Don't think that any of the slides have in it that there might be like a wall around the Middle East or around the GCC. Countries like Bahrain have online agencies. We have in Qatar online labs working for Qatar Foundation that are like amazing. They're up at Silicon Valley level. So GCC means just, I want to give you a bit of a flavor of what works and what doesn't work in the GCC yet. But 90% is about transformation that we're all going through globally. So let me see how it works. This is a quote from, I would say, a business mogul, a visionary. He's on the side of royal as well. He's a member of the royal family in Saudi Arabia. And what he says there is actually digital transformation is not the objective. Digital transformation is what we're doing to achieve something. And what do we have to achieve here in travel is new business models. This region of the world has the highest number of travel agencies per capita. Will they all survive? Well, I don't want to upset anybody here in the room, but I predict that within now and 5 years, you will not find 50% of the travel agencies anymore that you now find here on the ATM. Why? They have to find new business models. And to find those new business models, you have to embrace the opportunities, the challenges in the digital transformation. So it is a catalyst for new business models. Any travel agents here? Okay. So how did you sell your packages 5 years ago? What was the main, were you online? Were you offline? All offline. Are you online now? And I don't think you do this because it's just fun to be online. You want to make money. So digital transformation is there to embrace, to make money, to keep making money. Your customers are running away to the booking.coms of this world and book there. And where 5 years we were all waiting, what are we going to do? Now booking.com is taking away my customers and they also have all the data. So I'm losing my customers. Now, the ones who decided not to go the booking.com route, and I'm not selling booking.com by the way, but an online platform, have now seen the customers leave anyway to booking.com and don't get any commissions. And now you have to embrace those solutions to create new business models to earn money. Productivity. I can remember working for a travel agent where we were measuring productivity of an agent, and we said an agent has to produce 6 airline tickets a day. Well, that was at a time where we were making 9% on a ticket. So we could just rest and just enjoy the fact 6 tickets, 7 tickets was enough to survive. Right now, you have to produce tens of tickets a day to be productive. Embrace, therefore, the digital opportunities. So, I think that one was one too quick. There you go. So, I already mentioned it is not an objective, it is a journey. So, the digital opportunities that you find here in Hall 1 are all great. But do they make sense to everybody? Maybe not. So you have to create a journey for yourself and set yourself a strategy first before going into the digital world. Now, in this region, it has to go very quick now. There's one thing if you go to the gas station, and for the ones from this region, actually they should say, it is becoming a ridiculous expensive, because if I get my full tank of gas here in the UAE, it's about 70% more expensive than 2 years ago. So that has to do with, the oil price. So diversification is big. All of the countries here are investing heavily in travel and tourism. And the agencies, the airlines, they all have to follow suit because that's where the new jobs have to be created. So that's one. Then that growth is here in the UAE has been like a double-digit number, and it has to stay there. Otherwise, we cannot maintain all the beauty of Dubai, what you see outside of this building. Third, very important, demographics. The youngest population in the world lives across one border from here in Saudi Arabia. Lots of young people, the millennials. So nobody outside of this region actually really knows this because we all think that the GCC people that visit London are representative for what the demographics look like. It's an enormously young population here. Saudi Arabia tops it, UAE is number 2. So they're the millenniums that actually drive the change. If you're an agency and you don't have an online booking tool, if you are a hotel and you're not on the platforms that the young kids are using, you miss out. My last 3 years, I worked for the Sovereign Wealth Fund in Bahrain. And Bahrain is a funny, nice island just off the coast of Saudi Arabia. And it's connected with the causeway. On Thursday afternoon, about 800,000 Saudis crossed the causeway. And I don't want to make jokes about their driving, particularly not about the driving going back. But what they do is the first parking after the border is get a parking, shut off the car, open up booking.com or any of the other booking platforms and book a hotel, because they just leave without booking the hotel. Because it's, shh, don't tell anybody we go to Bahrain, and then they book online. If you don't have your answers right, then you lose out on the opportunities.
We have your attention, please. The first session of the day
Is here.
start at 11 p.m. at the global stage located in hall number 8. Please make your way there. Thank you.
Okay, so we're all happy we're here. So then we have the becoming of age traveler. This is the Gen Y. This is the generation that now has the money and the time to travel. But what you see as a huge trend in this region is they travel together. It is couples traveling. Expatriates, I think I see many of them here in the room. Where we have about 9 million expatriates living here in the Middle East. They have more free time to travel than when they're home. Americans are amongst the nationals that have at home about 18 holidays in average, and here they have 25 to 30. So what do? They travel more. Also a dynamic that there is a huge growth in travel here in the Middle East. Availability and penetration of technology, and I'll show you a slide on the next here. Is everybody has a mobile phone here? I don't know how they get to the numbers, but in Saudi Arabia you have 2.1 mobile phone per capita. That's amazing. That's a huge number, but on top, they're using it as well. Bookings made online here are made 80% on mobile and only 20% on PCs. So they use PCs to shop, like a window shopping, and then they'll go to the mobile and book. So in your digital transformation, it's not about, okay, let's now get a mobile app. But if you know your customers, if your customers are young, if your customers are between 25 and 45 or Gen Y, you got to have a mobile strategy to book and mobile strategy to pay. So, opportunities of the digital transformation here in the GCC. And I have a quote here from the gentleman who is the head of travel at Google. And Google is that, on one hand, our biggest friend. And I do think that we have travel professionals here as well who start sweating by only thinking about what Google is and what Google could do. They are extremely powerful. And what his quote says is the opportunity for everybody who's here in the travel industry is in the digital arena, specifically in social media, because social media used to be a Tinder for travel. Let's find nice people to travel with, or the TripAdvisor approach of sharing knowledge about a destination. Right now, social media is everything. Social media is where I make my decisions on where I go because it's peer-to-peer marketing. I don't trust brochures. I will not trust a website of a travel company anymore. I want on that website the application with TripAdvisor or any other application that tells me who out of my network has been to this hotel and can tell me, well, I had very good experiences there. So what he's saying is social media is important for decision making, influencing, and now social media, your social media has to be ready to be able to actually generate revenue. The links to the sites, and if you look at Twitter, if you look at Facebook, they should be online shops for you. Stronger customer orientation. Know your customer. No digital journey will work if you don't know who your customer is. Now, social media, other internet application can help you identify who is your customer, what do they want, who do they talk to, who are their influencers. It's amazing. I think there are about 150 bloggers registered on ATM today. I don't even know whether I could spell the word blog 5 years ago. Now, if you think about the Saudi Arabian market, there are bloggers that have about 2.3 million followers. These are the influencers of current Saudi Arabia. I'm not sure whether that will remain because Saudi Arabia is not in a digital transformation, it is in an overall transformation. So things are changing so rapidly. Efficiency, embracing social media and internet to get more higher productivity. Cost of labor in this region is still lower than the Americas and in Europe. But still, it doesn't count now anymore to have enough staff sitting in an office and doing back office work. So it is all about outsourcing, near sourcing, and internet. Now, the digital customer experience has to be better than offline. I also see travel agencies, I see hotel chains moving rapidly into digital and then creating a customer journey, a customer experience that is actually worse than offline. I had a wonderful presentation on our stand to 3 very adventurous entrepreneurs from Erbil in the north of Iraq. They have 2 travel agencies. And so they were talking to my team about getting all kinds of online stuff going because we have to. So I said, who are your customers? So their customers are high-end people who want them to pick up the phone to a hotel in Tokyo to prepaid that hotel because they don't have a credit card. So why would you go online? Why would you want to have the lowest rates and then find out that you need the personal credit card of this person? So you lose your customer. So what I'm trying to get across here is know your customer first before moving online. Virtual reality. You've seen them here, the stands with the glasses. It seems that DMCs here in the Middle East do not yet have it all right, but it will go to a situation where people will experience a destination on their sofa with their glasses on instead of going to an agency or even try it out first. So the Tinder effect is something that is big in travel now. Here in the regions, I think it's even more important than in certain other regions because the way the people communicate here is a lot through social media because of their mobiles. So they decide on what to buy, when to buy, where to buy, based on what the friends are actually telling them. So you connect with people first before you take a decision. So on sports events, golf events, match play, first find somebody who's as good as you to play and then go on a golf trip together. That is huge here. So you buy here in the GCC now, wherever, whenever, whatever. And this is coming back to my prediction, and don't take it personal if you're a travel agent, that I predict that 75% maybe of all agencies will not be around as a travel agency anymore. But the agencies have to get their act together. The challenges in the Middle East is availability of technology and skill set. I'm not going to read through all of this. What is so important, and I think I've seen these mistakes made in other regions as well. You, with your customers all around the world, we have all seen people embracing best practices. Let's get the best booking tool. Let's get the best back office. And they put the money on the table, and then it doesn't connect. Or you have something on your shelf now, and your customers are not buying it. Why? Because you didn't know your customer. You didn't have the holistic approach. So there's a requirement to look at digital in a holistic way. Not only about efficiency. No, it should be efficient, but at the same time, the customer journey should be better than offline, right? Because otherwise nobody would go online. And there is, I would say, a gap between aspiration and what really can be done. I know there are people from the region, and I always love countries like Abu Dhabi, etc. They have Vision 2030, Vision 2020. Coming from a northwestern European country, we sometimes read these things like it's a dream. And for travel, I've seen plans that are so extremely ambitious that I think we should be a little bit more realistic. It's not that digital is the solution to everything. Okay. So what are we going to see here? So if you're here at ATM and you want to sell to this region, then, or you want to get people from this region to your country or to your company, one of the biggest trends that we see is Generation Y is traveling. Mom and dad are traveling. The kids are out of the house and we're traveling. Dad has to work, mom has to work, and the spouse is actually following. We see a huge increase of trips where leisure and business are actually more like diluted. So it's becoming a trip for two, and they're doing business, and they go on a leisure trip. The one channel distribution, I go into, and that channel could be everywhere. That could be Groupon. This could be, I have a card with a bank, and this bank is actually providing me with everything. But we want one channel, on and offline, no barriers. So what are the roles what is the changing role in the value chain? Traditionally, I went to a travel agent who would book me a hotel and an airline. Then this all got messed up because airlines went direct, hotels went direct, etc. Now it's becoming even more increasingly complex. 20% of the people in the UAE buy their travel not with travel companies. They buy with Groupon. They buy with HSBC, their bank. They buy whilst they're in line at Lulu's, and they find on the other side of that, it's a supermarket chain. On the flip side of the receipt, it says, go to the cashier and get 10% discount on a round trip to the Maldives. So the digital transformation has made it possible that you connect selling platforms of supermarkets with credit cards, with travel companies, and now it is entirely diluted where the customer actually finds his relationship with. Is it with Groupon? Is it with the bank? Is it with Lulu's? Or is it with the agency that at the back has actually created this package? This is all going to change here. This is a cashback discount market. People love cashback. almost like in the US. And it's very, very different to Asia and to Europe. So the roles in the value chain are changing. And I concluded that earlier, travel is bought everywhere at every time. And whether it's in the supermarket or it's at home behind the PC. So how do we do this at Prism? The company that I am very proud of heading is a travel company in the loyalty and reward space. We are looking at all these opportunities that actually it's not us selling, it's not the travel agency selling, it is the bank selling, or it is the supermarket selling, or it is the newspaper who is lacking readers. And how do you attract readers? Why don't you give them a discount on travel? Because travel is the most popular commodity for anybody here in the region. So we have online platforms that we bring in a holistic way to B2B partners. And the B2B could be an agency, but we're looking at other people who could act like a travel agency. 1 minute to have my last bullet point. So it is all about collaboration. And here in the Middle East, parties are ready to collaborate on the new digital platforms. So banks want travel as a content. They want to work with travel agency as long as they have the digital platforms ready to be connected. So I'm here to tell you that digital transformation is a journey. You're either on it and then you have to live it and you have to stay on focus. And then it's a great journey because there's so much news here on ATM and out there to embrace that will make your business more profitable, more efficient. If you don't embrace it or you do not get on the journey, you could actually ruin your own business. So be careful. Thank you very much. It's amazing to even see you all come in now, 10:30. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Any questions? Via call? You keep the mic. I keep the mic.
Benyo, thank you so much for that. Who would like to ask Benyo a question? Very interesting start. Yeah, microphone just there. What would be very helpful if you can tell us who you are, the company you're from, just to put your question in context, please.
My name is Umar Al-Juraifani. I'm coming from Saudi Arabia with a travel agent company. As you know, in Saudi Arabia, most of the travel agents, it is belong to a group. They was focusing on ticketing business, blah, blah, blah. With what you are saying of transferring to digital era or something, here is an investment, and in the same times, if you're looking for ticketing business or hotel, all of them, they are transferring. Here the questions, where is the role of travel agencies in this? Even if they transfer to digital, still the pressure of zero commission business now and get back charge from discounted rate from travel, hotel, blah, 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 blah. Where do you see that? What is the future to transfer travel agencies to digital era?
Benyo, any thoughts on that?
I think it's a great question, first of all, and I think it also underlines my comment. If there's one country who is in a huge transformation now and is actually doing it more rapidly than most of the other countries around Saudi Arabia, it's Saudi Arabia. And on the other hand, your role and your transformation is the same as travel agencies have gone through in the US or in Asia. If you do not have value add to your customers, excuse my words, you're dead in the water. Huh? So what do your customers want? I don't know what your segment of the market is, but if you're servicing the general public in Saudi Arabia, what do they want? When I arrived here in the region, I thought, if I look at the average spend of a Saudi family going on a trip, they don't care about cost. Having been here in the region for 9 years, I know Saudis are very, very cost conscious. And if you betray them once, they will not come back anymore. So transparency is key, and you have to be able to sell your value add as a separate service, whether it's a transaction fee or it's a management fee. If they don't want to pay for that, then obviously you have not yet been able to convince what that value add is. So that the value add could be savings. The value add could be the fact that they could become a member of some, because that's what I've seen in some of the countries here. They created a membership-only portal. So they pay upfront a certain amount of money, and then you provide low rates, zero commission, very transparent. So they see that you were the great person to give them an access, and you give it at a discount. So they're happy. You can still make your money. But it's in Saudi Arabia, it's about accessibility, savings, and quality of service. And quality of service is online and offline.
Okay, Ben, a quick thought from me about that. I was very interested in your comment. You said we have to think about digital in a holistic way. Mm-hmm. You mentioned Generation Y. Actually, I'm now thinking about Generation Z, which are moving on from the Ys, who like stories, who have like interpersonal relationships. I did some work for a Saudi Arabian online travel agent a couple of years ago, and they saw themselves as wanting to compete with Expedia and Booking.com. They wanted to be high-tech, very efficient. But I'm interested in your thoughts on this. I think we might be moving beyond that, because the big thing about Booking.com, Expedia, and indeed this Saudi Arabian online travel agent, they were trying to compete on what I'll call faceless technology. They were trying to be big, efficient, and in the online world, there can only be one or two big, efficient companies. The companies that can afford to be so huge that they can actually afford the technology. Whereas Generation Y and Generation Z, they're in the digital world, but what it's all about is relationships, social media, telling stories. So I wonder if you maybe think that actually a good approach to digital transformation is not to try to compete with Expedia and Booking.com, but try and build your personality and stories and interrelationships between you and your customers into your digital strategies. So that might mean blogging, that might mean social media, that might mean having your photos and names on your website, so people know that you're real people, even though you're digital. Any thoughts on that at all?
I would agree, yes. What I see with agencies nowadays in Saudi Arabia, but as well in Qatar and Kuwait, is that they have focused a lot on the booking itself, but have not yet concentrated enough on the social media aspect, because the social media aspect could actually take over that personal service aspect, because it's not just purely you or your staff explaining your customers, but you give them access to 1,500 peers that have been to that destination as well, and they will tell your audience what is good about them. I'm also aware that this region of the world will always take a little longer to give up on all of the personal
that this might be easier done in Northern Europe or America, but it's coming here.
As long as, and I think you touched upon the fact that there are agencies without the holistic approach that wanted to go online too quick, and I know names of them in Riyadh. They wanted to go very big, very online, but they missed the point because their audience was not yet there to buy this.
Benyu, time to move on to our next speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Benyu very much for a very good opening session. Thank you. Thank you so much. And just for those who've arrived, thank you. Just for those who arrived, just to let you know that if you don't want to take notes or take photos of the presentation slides, my speakers have given me permission to actually email you when those presentations are online. So you just can leave your business cards on the way out, and I'll drop you an email when I've got the presentations up online, so you don't need to take notes. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for me to introduce our second speaker of the morning. And his name is Richard Lewis. He's Partnerships Director of Travel and Tourism from the most amazing geographical mapping innovation, I call it. What 3 words? Let's welcome Richard, everybody. Little hand for him.
Good morning, everyone. So my name is Richard Lewis. I'm the Partnerships Director for Travel and Tourism for What Three Words. Getting from A to B is not always straightforward. And you need basically three things. One, you need a map. Two, you need a navigation system. And thirdly, you actually need an address. Well, there's been great advances in the sophistication of navigation systems, mapping, and satellite imagery over the last decade. However, the problem is that addressing hasn't really changed for hundreds of years. In fact, it's extremely challenging to talk about a location. And if you come to think about it, the world is very poorly addressed. It's not as straightforward to move from A to B, even in those countries which have had an addressing system for some time. And 75% of the world is actually poorly addressed. It has no addressing system or a poor and inadequate system. It is difficult to talk about a location. You can drop a pin, and pin is great for digital, but actually you can't actually give someone a pin. You can't write a pin down. You can't get into your car and tell your satellite navigation system a pin. And many of the best places in the world simply don't have an address. So, amazing places to go camping. A market stall in Marrakesh. These places don't have addresses. You can't find them. And if you take this as an example of a very smart city, Dubai, which is developing at such a pace, sometimes it is challenging to find road names on a map. And when I was looking for the World Trade Center here in Dubai, putting World Trade Center into Google Maps gives you the metro station, which is not too bad because it's not far away, but it isn't where you want to be. So I tried again. And the second option was Trade Center 1, World Trade Center Dubai. But actually, the pin drops you at a taxi pickup point and drop-off point. It doesn't actually give you a building at all. So how are you meant to get into this hall? It's the precision that you need. If you take a pin in the middle of a building, so if you take this example, a Marriott hotel in Mexico, you don't even know, which road to go down because you don't know where the entrance to that hotel is. This is very erratic. In London, if I was to get into my car and ask for Church Road, there are 19 church roads in London. So you need more data than simply a road name. In Mexico City, amazingly, there are 632 Juarez streets. Again, not so simple to navigate in a city where you have an addressing system. And in London, are the even numbers on one side of the road and the odd numbers on the other? Is number 10 opposite number 11, or are they some distance apart? And it's easy to make mistakes with addresses. So this is a famous instance of an American tourist in Iceland. And he put an extra letter R in the name of the town that he wished to visit and found himself 4 hours, 45 minutes away from where he wanted to be. So it's not always easy to use traditional addresses. GPS coordinates are fantastically accurate. They're far more accurate and universal than a postal service or postal system. Far more accurate. But people are not programmed to memorize this number of numbers. it's very difficult to communicate this to a friend, to let them know exactly where you are. And making even one small mistake in these numbers can lead you to the north part of Rome, for example, rather than where you want to be, which is in the south part of Rome. So what three words? This is very erratic. Pardon? I might do that, yeah. So what three words has put a grid across the whole of the Earth? We've divided the world's surface into 57 trillion 3 meter by 3 meter squares. And we've given every single one of those squares a very simple three-word address. So 3 words to describe any place on the planet. 3 words are very easy to communicate. You can actually tell someone your address. You can write 3 words down. You can get into a car or something that has voice recognition, and you can actually tell the system your 3-word address. You can use social media. You can actually use text messages or WhatsApp. And each of these systems will give you the 3-word address very easily that you can remember. We have an app. Our app is free to download on iOS, on Android, and it works offline. So even though we have 57 trillion addresses, each with 3 words, the whole of our system is only 10 megabytes. So this is a smaller file size than a high-resolution photograph. And the reason for that is that we have an algorithm. And the algorithm switches a GPS coordinate into a 3-word address and then flips it back again so that you can get to exactly where you need to be. And we do have our own app, but we also have code. And a lot of people are now embedding our code, which is simply 2 lines of code, and using it in their app, their website, or their mapping tool. We're used in sat-nav and route planning apps, including offline navigation. So the example on the left is NavMe, which is the largest offline navigation system in the world. And if you type in the 3-word address into NavMe, then you get your turn-by-turn directions to exactly where you want to go. And similar on the right is an app called TripGo, which is a city planning app. And again, typing in the 3 words will get you to exactly the place you need to be. We are not just in English. We're in 13 other languages, and we're developing more and more every month. So we have a number of new languages that will be launched before the end of this year. And each language is built bottom up. So we don't translate from English into Arabic or Swahili or into Russian. Each language has its own set of words. And Arabic was launched in December last year. So if I wanted to send a 3-word address to a Saudi friend, they would receive that 3-word address in Arabic or in the choice that they wish to receive it. But let's say usually in Arabic. And those 3 words in Arabic are not related to the 3 words in English, but it takes you to exactly the same square. So if you think about a 3-meter square, and you think about 14 languages, it will take you to exactly where I'm standing, waiting for you to meet me. And we thought about the words themselves. In order to name 57 trillion squares, you only need about 38,000 dictionary words in English. So if you have, for example, table, chair, lamps, the plural, and you have table, chair, lamp, the singular, we put them miles apart. Because in navigation, it's better to be thousands of miles wrong than 1 mile wrong. If you're 1 mile wrong, it's very frustrating. You're nearly there, but you can't find your friend at an event or on the beach. If you know that one address is in North America and you're actually in Australia and you're meeting someone in Australia, you know you have the right address. We've also used the shorter words for urban areas and the longer words for rural areas where less people will go. We're used by people in over 170 different countries, and we are now being used by national postal services in 5 countries. Mongolia was the first, and then in Tonga, Djibouti, Cote d'Ivoire, and Saint Martin. So we're in 3 continents of the world. And we're being used more and more in travel and tourism. And if you're in travel and tourism, and I guess you are, then for the vast majority of you, it is free to use What 3 Words. So if you are using us as a listing service to give your guest, to give your traveler, your customer, the perfect place to go, the exact precise 3 meter by 3 meter square to find that restaurant, find the bus stop for the big bus company, or to find some other point of reference, then it's free to use. Some companies may have to pay, but usually in travel and tourism, not. So this is Montcalm Hotels in London, and they've added a 3-word address so that all their guests can find the precise front door of all their hotels in London. This is another company, Starboard Hotels, which have now added a 3-word address. They have a number of branded hotels in the UK. Grace Hotels went live yesterday. They've now added a 3-word address to their hotels throughout the world. This is closer to home in Dubai, Landmark Hotels. They were an early innovator and adopted our 3 words to give a precise entrance to their front door. Absolute Adventure, an amazing adventure company here in the United Arab Emirates and also working in Oman. They've used 3-word addresses to give the precise point of entry to their camps. And a lot of other adventure companies like what we're doing at What 3 Words, because if you're in adventure, if you're hiking or biking or trekking, you're often in places that simply don't have an address. And you need to know where you are, especially in the case of emergency. This is PearlShare. They've got 1 million points of interest around the world. This example is of a bar in Singapore. The 3-word address can be seen. So they would give you, for example, a 3-word address of the best place to go kite surfing in Dubai. At the Rio Olympic Games last year, Rio Go embedded our 3-word system, What 3 Word system into their app. So if you were a visitor to Rio for the Olympic Games, we could actually help you to find the exact venue, the entrance to the venue, or in fact, the restaurant after the sports events had ended. We're very good for stadiums. So this is Soldiers Field in Chicago. And if you were visiting that city and going to American football, you might have a friend who lives in Chicago with your ticket. So giving a Google pin, which puts you in the middle of the playing field, which actually only the players will ever get to, is not actually that helpful. What you need is the exact point of entrance where your ticket will get you through, or where you can park your car or meet your friend. And we're used in music festivals and events as well. So this year will be used in a Hungarian music festival, and last year we used at Glastonbury. If you know Glastonbury, it's a huge music festival in the UK. 200,000 people go to a field. And last year, the organizers took a drone image of that field and then overlaid it with our 3 meter by 3 meter grid. And they can start planning where the medical centers go, where the disabled toilets and the changing rooms. And in the case of emergency, they would then use our What 3 Words addressing system to get to that precise point where somebody needs help. So this is Glastonbury. And we work with a number of organizations. We're a member of PARTA, I'll be presenting at the Pata Summit down in Sri Lanka in May. And we work with the Hoteliers Network here in the Middle East as well. So the next meeting that they have is actually on the May the 2nd. If you're not a member, then do become a member and join all the people in hospitality here. About 6 weeks ago, the Department of International Trade in the UK came out with a list of 30 of the brightest tech innovations in the UK. And that list included radar, radio waves, the World Wide Web, the telephone, and the jet engine. It also included what 3 words. We were very proud to be in that list, but also very humbled to be in with all those other amazing tech innovations. And at What 3 Words, we have a very clear vision. The vision is to make the world a less frustrating, a more efficient, and a much safer place. Thank you very much.
That's fantastic, Richard. Thank you very much indeed. It's a real trail-blazing innovation, as you say. Would anyone like to ask Richard a question? Just pop your hand up. Richard, while everyone's thinking, you very kindly didn't mention your revenue model, but presumably What 3 Words needs to make money. Can I ask how you do that?
Yeah, so if you think about a butterfly business model, which Wall Street has referred to for some while, you have the black part of the butterfly, which is What 3 Words with the facilitator, the addressing system. And then we have 2 wings of the butterfly. We need consumers to actually use the What 3 Words and the address, but we also need businesses to actually use it as well. So for the travel and tourism industry, for humanitarian organizations, for charities, they don't pay. But in the case of those organizations which have a commercial upside, those people who make more profit by delivering accurately, they do pay. So it's been researched that the last mile in any delivery costs about 28% of the total cost of that delivery. So people like logistics companies, drone companies, car manufacturers who are looking at embedding What 3 Words into voice recognition, for example, anybody who is actually making some commercial gain, so retail that is actually delivering. I'm not going to mention any names, but you know who I'm talking about. So anybody that is actually making a food delivery, door to door, are actually paying us, and that's the model.
Okay, I mean, we're very lucky in the UK because we have quite sophisticated postcoding, and your postcode will take you down to about a group of 4 or 5 houses. And of course, we're now very used in the UK tapping in our postcode into our car navigation systems. And you mentioned that when you get into a car, type in 3 words. Are there any plans to integrate with car navigation systems at all? That's quite a big call, I imagine.
Yes, so a couple of questions there. In the UK, we do have postal codes, but they're not as good as people seem to think they are. If you're in a rural area, for example, you might have 6 to 10 houses far apart that are actually in one postal code. And most of those houses have taken down any number they ever had and put up a name. So it's not actually easy to find the house that you're trying to find. And in a city, you might actually not have exactly the front door of the building that you want to go to. And that's a big challenge because it's costing you money. Every minute lost when you're trying to deliver something accurately is time and money lost. So that's the first point. And the second question was,
And the second point was whether
navigation in
you've
cars.
got plans
so
to roll out into cars. Yes.
Yes, that's a good one. Okay, so the answer is we're already working with Jaguar Land Rover here in the Middle East. And we have tested the ability to put a 3-word address into a car navigation system. So if you were to get into a car and press a navigation button and say panel, novel, listed, you'd be taken to a restaurant in the UK, a 3-meter by 3-meter square outside that restaurant in the UK. And it works perfectly. You cannot get into a car and drop a pin. It would be very, very difficult for you to get into a car and actually put in 16 to 18 numbers on a GPS coordinate. And yes, you can put in a postcode, but once you put in a postcode, you need to put in the street name and possibly the house number. So yes, we're looking at that.
That's great. Does anyone else have a question for Richard at all? Yes, a gentleman here, then there, then there. Yeah, thank you. Do tell us who you are, where you're from.
Gareth Brown from Big Bus Tours.
Thank you.
Just a quick question about elevation. If you were living on the 17th floor of a multi-story building, would the grid reference take it at ground level and then you put 17, it would still take you to your front door?
Okay, that's a good question. For altitude, we're fine. So any topography of the Earth, so Everest, the top of Everest has a 3-word address. In fact, somebody went on a trek to Mount Kilimanjaro, and when they reached the peak, they took the 3-word address. So I hope someday we'll actually have a sign with the 3 words there as well. When you're talking about buildings, usually if it's a very tall building, the most important thing is, if you're driving to that building, where is the entrance to the car park? Once you're inside the building, or close to the building, what is the best door for you to actually go through to get to the place you need to be? So if you take, for example, the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world, which door are you going to walk into? You go the wrong one, you could be 10 minutes walking around to the right elevator. But the answer to your question is that if you're in apartment 1201, and as long as the building is straight up and down, 1201 will be the same address as 1101 and 601, all the way down to the ground. Because until the Internet of Things or the Internet of Everything allows you to then do elevation within a building, then we can't do that at What 3 Words. And that's not what we do. What we do is the addressing at the ground level. So the 57 trillion squares are at the ground level. You would still have to tell your friend that you were in apartment 1201.
Okay, fine. Another question? What was there at all? No, is it all covered? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, time to move on. Richard, that's fantastic. Thank you so much indeed. Thank you. An amazing innovation. We're going to move on now. We've got another session come up here which I'm calling Digital Transformation in Travel. So what we're going to do now, we're going to have 3 presentations from our 3 speakers, and then we'll take questions as a panel session. So sitting next to me is Tony Portman. She's Chief Executive Officer of, now do I pronounce it DISCO? DHISCO, as you can see there. And then furthest away from me is John. John is, he is Chief Operating Officer of Trip Creator. We'll be hearing from him. And then sitting in the middle of them both is Dimitri from Omnicom. Sorry, got my pronunciation right. So we're going to have 3 presentations. As I said, if you want copies of presentations, just leave your business card at the front door.
I'm here to talk to you about this transformation of hotel distribution. And assuming I can get the technology to work, I think the real question is, content is really king. And all we have to do is define what a property is. In the olden days, we wouldn't have a pool, we might have a moat. We might not have a room, we'd have bed chambers, and the entrance to the hotel that the three words would define would be maybe the drawbridge. But that's not it today. Today we need to welcome guests in a multitude of languages to a property that is defined in an online travel environment that describes what, who, where, and content in our vernacular is three big things: availability, rates, and inventory, or ARI, then static content or descriptive content, and then finally images or pictures. And we all know that that is a complex, archaic, disintermediated, very confusing set of attributes in today's technology systems. So we have to transform. And we believe that transformation includes three major things. One, we have to curate the content. Two, we have to syndicate and distribute that content. And three, we have to make it globally available and understandable. So let me take you through our vision of those three things real quick. Curation. No longer is a room a room. No longer is a bed a bed. Think about alternative lodging, Airbnb. We now have a room as a bedroom or as a little cot. We have an air mattress instead of a bed. And quite frankly, the systems that we deal with look like this. Those of you that are in the hotel content distribution business could probably read this. It's full of acronyms, it's full of abbreviations, it's full of slashes and dots and symbols, isn't it? And this is what gets distributed today. So talk about digital transformation. This is light years away from what our systems can read. So what we have to do is we have to translate. And today, our descriptions are any room. What's a superior room? What's a king room? What's a queen room? What's a room? A basic description has to turn into an image with how many beds, what kind of bed, how does it have a tub or just a shower? What about smoking? Non-smoking? We'll talk about that. Wi-Fi refrigerator? Does it have a sofa bed for my guests? And what about breakfast? So a pool is not a pool, is it? Nowadays, whether you're a traveler, you want to know, is the pool indoors or is it outdoors? Is it heated or is it not heated? Is it a lap pool or is it a leisure pool with little kids running around? And depending on why you're traveling, where you're traveling, and what you want to travel to, you need that to be described. So in syndicating and describing that, what are we going to do? Everyone's probably heard the new term, the bleisure traveler. We used to say there's business travelers and there's leisure travelers, but now there's the bleisure traveler. Just out of curiosity, how many of you are taking a side trip, even before this conference or after, staying in Dubai? How many? Yup, you're the bleisure guys and gals. So now we have to figure out, if we're going to digitally transform data and content, how we get a persona based on what you want to do when you travel. Here's what we know. There are 7 or 8 most searchable attributes, but they're slightly different if we're a leisure traveler or if we're a business traveler. And in fact, what we know is we're going to make choices about where we stay and how much we pay based on the type of traveling we're doing. You can see their free Wi-Fi ends up being number 1, which I think is fascinating. 2 free breakfasts, but then it gets a little tricky. Of course, the leisure traveler wants free parking. The business traveler doesn't care about parking. They want to know about mass transit. They want to know about where they can, and by the way, in mass transit, not only do I have a shuttle, but what are the hours of operation? How do I catch it? Where do I catch it? We also look at, and very importantly, whoops, very sensitive here. Here we go, there we go. So what we found is we do about 11 billion transactions every month at Disco. That's quite a few. So we've mined the data of the shopping. What do people actually look for in their search terms? And what we find is free internet, free parking, you can see there. then we do an assessment that says, you, the hotelier, the brand or the chain, how well are you describing your property? So, interestingly enough, only 4% of the global chains, 432 of them that we have connected, have non-smoking right. Why? Because it's a bit or a byte. It's now a 1 or a 0. So if I have yes in non-smoking, does that mean yes, I'm non-smoking, or yes, I have smoking? Very, very confusing when the traveler searches for their attribute of choice. You can see there the rest of the attributes, including pool, which I think is particularly interesting because that is a searchable bleisure term, but then they look for descriptive content and can't find it. So how do they do it? Well, typically the next thing they do after they search, they click, they look, and they want to see rich media, don't they? You want to see pictures. In fact, travelers are 150% more likely to book when they have access to, get this data point, 20 or more pictures per property. They want to see what they're staying in. And by the way, the latest data from Expedia says the number one thing they want to see a picture of, anyone know? What's the latest that they want to see a picture of? No, not the pool. What? The bathrooms. Very good. They want the bathrooms. When I asked a gentleman from Expedia why, you know what he said? He said, they want to know if it's clean or not. I'm like, how can they tell from the picture if it's a clean bathroom? But they want to see the bathroom. That's very interesting. 225% have a higher likelihood of booking if they have at least one photo. You don't have a photo, you're probably not going to get booked. Very important. Even Airbnb if it's a room. And then 79% of travelers say photos and video do affect their decision to book. So here's what we see. In fact, we've mined the data, and the most optimal number of images by definition are 12. We have 12 different images that we recommend that you have in your image of your properties. And then what we look at is, of these 12 images, at least have these, depending on the traveler that you're trying to attract. Now, of course, the business traveler might care a lot more about the conference rooms than does the leisure traveler. But those 12 pictures, if you're a bleisure resort or hotel, need to be affected. And then there's more. So what we have tried to do is do a little assessment. And what we give back to the hoteliers, the chains, the brands, is an assessment. How many average properties within your chain or brand have at least the 12 images? And you can see here, this is real data for a particular brand. You can see that some have that 50, 60 images, mostly fancy resorts, mostly large properties. But on average, if you're dropping down below the 12 number, you need to get your work put together to get your images available and seeable. And then this one blew my mind. It's no longer you've got to have mobile. Sometimes it's mobile first, and now we're finding that in some cases it's mobile only. So OTAs, online travel, aren't online at all on a real web browser. They're mobile only. So, and this one freaked me out. So don't text and drive, I think is the mantra, but 4 in 10 people that book a hotel room through an OTA are doing so from their cars. 4 in 10, most recent data. That's frightening. I hope they're at a stoplight or they're parked, but I am not so sure. It's maybe the wife is sitting next to you, a business colleague is sitting next to you. Oftentimes with the new opaque models, a Hotel Tonight or a Hotwire, you're driving to the airport saying, I've got to have a hotel room when I land in LA. So very important. And mobile is no longer the future. It's actually here, and it's here now. 66% of the millennials are comfortable planning their entire trip on a mobile device. That's crazy. 73% use their smartphones to shop and book. 35%, or almost a third of all bookings, will be on a mobile device in 9 months. In 9 months, a third of the bookings. And finally, maybe 45% of hotels globally accept mobile bookings. So if you're not accepting mobile, if you're not connected to mobile, we certainly need to be. Next, globalization. So I've got a big question for the room because I think it's fascinating. What do you think the fastest growing language in the world is? Chinese we have here. What do we think? Chinese? Arabic. Arabic. Here in Dubai, of course, Arabic. How many think that? Any other guesses? Chinese, Arabic? Fastest growing language. Oh, you saw the presentation. It's a trick question, but it's fascinating. The fastest growing language in the world is emoticons. Literally, we are describing our sentiment, our locations, we just heard in 3 words, but 2 billion smartphone users, 41.5 billion messages, and 6 billion emoticons are sent around the world daily. It's the most fastest growing language in the world. And it supersedes, doesn't it, our nomenclature, our language differences. However, we must be very, very careful. Emoticons in different countries can conjure up all sorts of different meanings, can't they? In fact, in the United States, the hands coming together say that we are saying prayers. In other countries, it means someone has died. So that would be a very inappropriate emoticon to send if you didn't know the meaning. And in the hotel business, what I like is you might say, "We are so delighted that you're coming to share a room with us." And then when the guest leaves, "Oh, we're sad to see you go." The problem is, if you don't connect and tag the arrival with the departure and the emoticon of choice, you might be very, very confusing to the guest. So, multilingual is no longer an option. It is a must-have. 55% of consumers prefer to make their hotel choice in their native language. 56% consider content in their native language more important than price. They want to go somewhere where they recognize where they're from and what their behavior is. And 74% of consumers are going to purchase and stay a second time, a repeat visit, if they find that the support is in their native language. So if you can't read it, you can't book it. If you can't read it, you can't shop it. And if you can't shop it, you can't book it. So search terms and descriptive content need to be in their own online traffic language. 80%, I think that this fact is fascinating. 80% of all online traffic speaks in 10 languages. So we have those, and yet only 29% of that is English. We say that English is the language of business. Yeah, well, there's a lot of travelers that want to be represented in their local language. And quite frankly, in our mobile and connected environment, it's way faster to read than it is to translate. So, what do we see? The top languages in the world, by perspective, fewer than 50% of the population actually speak English. What's that? Yes, yes. And that is perfect because as we look at the 3 dimensions, curation, syndication, and globalization, it's critically important that we transform our digital distribution. And quite frankly, I really hope that you find your castle.
Thank you very much, Tony. That's a great presentation. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk a little bit about travel planning in the digital era. Let's welcome John.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to be talking about travel planning in the digital area. I'm not going to be talking about travelers that book their hotels from their cars. I'm going to talk about the segment that actually plans their travel ahead of time. I come from a company called Trip Creator. I think it's pretty obvious what we do. We help people create trips. I'm Jonar de Brausen. I have a background in multiple startup companies who have all been successful, somewhat related to the airline industry, but basically in startups. So what does travel planning in the digital era actually mean? Obviously, the digital era indicates that everything needs to be online. It needs to be accessible. The inventory, the hotel rooms, everything that you want to book needs to be accessible. You need to be, if you're planning digitally, there has to be availability checks. You need to be able to book. Now, we can ask, are we there yet? I think this shows that we are at least partially there. But let's think a little bit about where we are going to be in either 5 or 10 or 15 years. We will probably all have digital assistants called Siri or Lucy or whatever you want to call them. You might be at your home with your 55 or 75-inch screen, and you're going to say, Lucy, I want to go to Paris. I want to stay in France for 10 days. I want to drive around and visit 2 or 3 cities. I like good restaurants. Show me a plan. And Lucy, in my case, will actually show me on my screen a map showing me where I'm going to be driving. Lucy is going to find hotels for me. She's going to ask me a couple of questions, what kind of activities I like, and she's going to suggest a plan. I'm going to be able to tell Lucy that I don't want this kind of a hotel, I want a boutique hotel. I want to stay 2 days in Lyon instead of 3 days, and she'll fix it for me. Now, we're not there yet, but Google and Apple are all working on a digital assistant. They are the intermediaries. They won't know everything. They won't be able to do everything, but they will interpret what you ask for, and they will ask the expert solutions. So you'll still have to have a travel planning solution. So, can you hear me? Okay. So you'll still have a travel planning solution behind the travel assistant. So we're not there yet, but we're getting closer. So this is what most travelers do today. They go all over the place. They go to Google, they go and ask what's happening in Paris to get points of interest. They go to booking.com to actually book their hotels. They go to a rental car travel site. So they're all over the place. In order to plan their activity, they probably have their Outlook calendar up and they're trying to get these things done by hand. But let's talk a little bit about who the traveler actually is. I list there 3 different types of travelers. We already know that we have a 4th type, which is the one that doesn't plan, but actually books from their car. So I look at this as the self-planner is one type. They want to do everything themselves. They want to be online and take care of everything on their own. We also have the travel agency customer. They basically send an email or call a travel agency and say, this is what I want to do everything for me. And then you have the 3rd one, which is what I call the combo. It's a bit of both. You want to do most of it yourself, you want to customize your trip, but you want the hand-holding of an expert that can actually tell you that your trip plan is good and they book it for you, in that case, you have somebody to call if things go wrong. Now, we want a travel planning solution that supports all of these. The interesting thing is the last one here, that the millennials are actually more likely to use travel agencies than the generations before them. So this is from the US, but in the last year, 22% of Americans from households are actually more likely to talk to a travel agency. But obviously the travel agency has to be efficient. They need to be able to respond to requests and do the planning that you expect them to do. Now, what do they need? This is what they need. They need the flights to get where they're going to go, if they're flying at all. They need accommodation, they need transportation, tours and activities, and they want all the points of interest that are local to the area where they're traveling. But last and not least, this is what people are mostly looking for. Everything needs to fit together in space and time. If you're traveling via car, you don't want to be driving back and forth. You want the planner to actually tell you what's the best route to go. You want to get quickly to your destination, and you want to fill your day with plans and activities that don't run into each other. So you want somebody to do this for you. We want the solution to do this. So let's talk about the airlines a little bit, because they are a big part of this, especially when you need to fly somewhere. They are looking for greater customer engagement. They are looking all for more ancillary revenue. They sell you the seats and they charge you for your luggage and the seats, but they are looking for more revenue. The revenue that they're looking for comes from commission, from accommodation, transportation, and tours and activities. Most airlines today actually have these things on their sites, but they're actually telling people to go somewhere else. They have hotels.com or booking.com, and when you go there, you actually are using those services. So the customers of the airlines are actually pushed away from the airline website to go somewhere else instead of being able to plan on the website. So this is the problem that the airlines are dealing with. They are looking for more engagement with the customers, that there are gaps in between. So they actually need a solution to fill these gaps, to do much more of a customer loyalty thing via hand-holding of the customer. So let's go and look at what travel agencies are struggling with. Growth today means linear cost. If you double your growth as a travel agency, you need more travel agents, you need more housing, you need more office space, etc. So costs go up. So travel agencies are actually looking for more automation, increased productivity, more online sales, more customer engagement, having the customer do more of the work than the travel agents themselves, even though everything goes through them. So this is really the problem for travel agencies today. If they want a detailed and a very good quality of a suggested itinerary, it takes them a lot of time. It may actually take them in some cases days, because they're not online with everything. If they want great quality, if they want to be fast, it's actually less quality. So what you actually do want as a travel agency, you want to be up here. Great quality, and you want to be fast in getting information back to your customers. And this is what I said before, you can't scale efficiently as a travel agency. If you increase your growth, you're going to have at least twice the staff and the office space. So I think, and my company and my CEO, who's actually sitting in the audience, who came up with this thing, we think that a travel solution, travel planning solution, is a part of the answer. So what do we need from the travel planning solution? We need it to be a win-win for everybody, for the airlines, for the travel agency, and for the traveler themselves. They need to be able to do the planning in one place, not go to 16 different sites to actually get this thing done. And everything needs to be integrated into their websites so that you can actually do this with the customer. So what would this look like? It's a solution that solves all these problems that I was talking about. It solves the needs of the customer, It solves the problems that the travel agencies are dealing with, and actually solves the problems that the airlines are looking for or looking to solve. So it needs to be powerful. It needs to be able to suggest to you, like I said before, when I say to Lucy, my digital assistant, I just want to go on a trip, give me some suggestions. That's what you want to see from the solution itself. You don't want the travel agent who always suggests the same 10 things because they are actually local. You want something more. You want something that is not only from one or two travel employees, but actually has the breadth of many more points of interest. You need an intuitive user interface. Now in the future it'll be voice, but today we still need the mouse, we still need the map, we still need to be able to click. You also want to offer a single checkout. You've created this plan that includes all of these things that I listed. You want to be able to just click and buy the whole thing in one click, and you don't want to have to give your credit card out to 6 different sites. You may want to purchase some of these things at different times, but that means you just come back to your planner. So what did it look like? I mean, it can look like this. This could be a trip creator site where on the left-hand side you actually have a daily planner and you have the map on the right-hand side. But if it's a white label solution run as a software as a service, you can actually give the same planning solution to a lot of different companies that may actually also sell different inventory, their own inventory blended together with global inventory. So Iceland Air, we are actually going live with the travel planning solution on Iceland Air website in about a couple of weeks. If we're lucky, sometime in the future, we might be on Finnair. It could be the same thing on Virgin Atlantic. These are airlines. They might all be using the same solution, but different inventory. It could be their own inventory. It could be Booking.com. It could be rental cars or CarTroller, or if they own a rental car agency, they can use their own. So this is a planning solution that sits on top of the inventory, doesn't offer any specific inventory. It allows the customer to specify what inventory they want to use. So we may have to integrate via API to your inventory system, but we're already hooked up to some of those bigger ones. So why wouldn't Priceline? Priceline Group owns a lot of inventory, all kinds of inventory. Why wouldn't they have a planning solution that aggregates all their contents and services into one platform, that you don't have to go to different sites? Or even TripAdvisor, that, like we heard before, users rely on what other people or other customers say about products. Why wouldn't that be integrated into the planning? Now, in the future, you will ask Lucy to do all of this for you, and you will ask Lucy, what do my friends say about these things? That's what TripAdvisor does. If you have the solution, you will actually know a lot about your customer behavior. You will know your customer. You will know that a couple in their late 20s that don't have any kids are going to do different things than a couple in their late 30s with 2 young kids. You will find out what they add to their plans. You will find out what hotels are the most popular. And so you will learn to promote to your customers what's more applicable to them. So it's artificial intelligence, which is coming. We're not there yet, but we will in the near future. So I think I'm there within the 15 minutes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John. It looks like a trip planning revolution. And of course, a lot of what we talk about and see about is data. We talk about big data. I like to call it small data, but we're certainly harnessing data. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Dimitri to talk about it. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. So, each and every one of you sitting here today presumably works in the travel industry, and I've got to hope that you probably have some sort of digital presence. Now, what I'm going to talk to you about today is how you can leverage that digital presence in order to collect data that then you use to fuel your marketing strategies moving forward. Who am I to tell you these things? I don't work in travel. I work in marketing communications. So I'm here with Omnicom Media Group. We're one of the world's largest marketing communication services providers, and we work with companies in travel to help them as they pursue their digital transformation needs. So what I'm going to talk about throughout this presentation is got hopefully as much universal applicability depending regardless of what products or services that you're offering. Now, if you work in digital like I do, you may have heard that data is a pretty big deal. And in fact, a lot of people talk a little bit about how data is kind of like the new oil because of its power to transform our business fortunes moving forward. And it's one of those sort of topics that everybody is talking about. And I can tell you from experience, not very many companies are doing much with it. But I'm also going to counter that, because I'm going to say to you that actually data is not the big oil, because data is everywhere. It's plentiful. It's a raw commodity. And we've seen company after company trying to pursue collecting data as their objective. And by doing this, they've often found themselves in decision paralysis, collecting the wrong types of data, not knowing how to work with it, and moving in the wrong direction. Instead, I would actually say that it's not really the amount of data or big data that is the answer. It's really analytics. It's how do you source the right data? How do you extract it? How can you harmonize it, make it readily available where you need it, when you need it, in an automated fashion to ensure that it adds value to your business? That really is the value, and this is where I think a lot of companies are still falling short. And of course, in travel, just like any other industry, big data is a reality today. I could just share with you a couple little examples. One, a jetliner generates over 10 gigabytes of data every single second. And of course, this is data that is used to fuel efficiencies, to look at safety, all other engineering mechanisms. It's a reality and has been in the aeronautical industry for a long time. Economic factors, events, weather reports are already being fed into online booking engines to fuel their algorithms, to determine their pricing strategies. So it's already happening. Hotels are using customer feedback. They're overlaying it with mass transactional data in order to improve their hotel rooms. We talked a lot about hotel rooms today. The layouts of the rooms, the facilities in the rooms. It's all about utilizing the big data in an effective measure. And I think John did a great job of talking about how the travel consumer uses digital, so I'm not going to really touch on it for too long. Suffice to say that we all know our customers and consumers are already on the digital devices, booking, buying travel products, and have been doing so for many, many years. But the point here is that each and every time they interact, every action that they contribute, every download, every click of a button is creating data. And the problem is that most of the companies are not doing anything with it. And this is where we try to step in. So what is the type of data that our customers are creating? If you are in marketing and you are concerned with these sort of things, you may have heard first, second, and third-party data. What is the distinction? Well, the first-party data is the data that you own. It's the data that your assets are created through interactions with your customers. It could be through your website. It could be your app. It could be your CRM system. It could be your POS system, your ERP. These are all viable and important sources of data that you own today. Second-party data, on the other hand, is really data that sits outside of your business but could be of value to your business. And it tends to be other companies that might provide complementary services or products where the data they collect could add or enhance your understanding of your own customers. So, you know, things like online travel agents or other types of data partners which are providing other types of products and services. And then finally, third-party data, which tends to be the one that's the most readily available. And that's because this is aggregated by companies whose job it is to put together data, package it, and commercialize it by selling it to you. So a lot of companies might start dipping their toes in the third-party space, but in reality, the most important, and what I'm going to talk to you about today, is your own first-party data. Because this is data that you're actually sitting on today. It's data that is a treasure trove, and still 80 to 90% of the companies out there are doing nothing with it. Now the challenge with all this is that all of this data is unstructured. You've got different attributes, different variables you're collecting, and it's difficult that you can harmonize it. The second issue is that it sits in silos. Each data source is completely independent of the other, and it's difficult to get access to it in order to start to gain insights or to utilize it in any way, shape, or form. And of course, this leads to the last problem, which is that you don't get a unified customer view with all this disparate types of data. So what's the first practical step? Because this is an issue that we all face, right? So if I'm sitting in your shoes, or if I can give you one piece of advice, I would tell you this. The first thing you should do is start by accessing your data that you own by doing this. Oop, and I'm jumping ahead. Create what we call a data layer. Now, this sounds abstract, right? What the heck is a data layer? A data layer is simply a piece of code, a piece of script that you put together to collect and organize all your user customer data of every interaction across your owned assets, and it sits behind your website. It sits behind your app. It's a means of which you are able to organize all these attributes in a fashion that allows you to use them and send them to different types of tech or to analyze. It's basically the way that you start to organize your first-party data. Why is it important? One, because it enhances the customer data that you collect. You're able to pull disparate attributes and behaviors and actions and start to organize them into specific buckets and segments, and you'll be using this as the basis for your digital marketing future. Second, it allows for easy integrations into any third-party tech. So you can push it to the cloud, you can send it to Facebook, you can store it on your servers. It becomes the filter and the refinery for which you are able to send the data through. And as I mentioned earlier, this should be the single first step as a foundation to what data-driven marketing actually is. And I'm going to show you some examples. So how does it work, and what does it do? One such thing that it does is that it supercharges your analytics, your insights, your ability to gather those signals that enable you to make the right decisions that drive your business forward. How do we do that? As I mentioned before, you're collecting every action, every attribute, every behavior trait across all your own platforms, and you're organizing it and filtering it and structuring it. Then you provide advanced, or you apply advanced analytics onto it. This is where you get the eggheads to come in, and they start doing things like pathway to purchase analysis, multi-channel attribution modeling, segmentation sort of studies. You can do anything and everything with this data set once you've got it organized in the right place. And then, very simply, you push it to dashboards, to data visualization, to MIS systems. You want to make that data readily available to the key people in your organization in order for them to make the right sort of decisions about the business moving forward. So obviously, one thing that data does is it drives your understanding and how your customers can be organized and how you can improve your marketing activities. But the second part of what it does is that it supercharges your remarketing strategies. So in this instance, what you're doing is you're taking the data and feeding it directly into the media channels, into the walled gardens, into the tech platforms where you're actually doing your marketing activities. And what do I mean by that? Google AdWords, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. All of these platforms allow you to send them their data, and you can use your data to target customers based on your understanding of those individuals. You don't have to rely on their understanding of what your potential customers are. You can instead utilize your understanding to drive your strategies within these platforms. I'll give you some examples of what you can do. If somebody just purchased your product, why are you still advertising to them? We see companies doing this all the time, wasting millions of dollars talking to somebody when they just bought your product. And have we all not seen this? Have we all been to a website, purchased a pair of shoes, bought a ticket, did this, did that, and suddenly we see these ads that are following us around, right? That's clunky remarketing because they're not applying exclusion categories. Why? Because the platforms in which you are advertising, they don't know that this individual just bought your product, but you do. And you should be sending that data to them to create that exclusion category. Second option, or tactic, it allows you to be extremely granular with your segmentation. I think John was through some really interesting insights as to how people book their travel. But in essence, that's generic industry understanding of how people are buying and planning travel. How do your customers segment, and how do they buy your products, right? And what do you know about them that enables you to then retarget them across other platforms? Third, just like we can get very granular with our segmentation, we can also be dynamic with the type of creative messaging that we advertise to our customers. So if you have a particular segment of a customer, which is a regular Dubai to London traveler, you might be able to do a dynamic creative message that is pushing something to do with hotels in London or hotels in Dubai. Dynamic creative optimization is a whole nother topic that we could probably spend a few hours on, but suffice to say, using the data to fuel your targeting can also be used to fuel your messaging so that you send the right message to the right segment. And this is something that we're seeing moving hugely in our industry. Fourthly, conversion rate optimization. What does this mean? You can now change your website experience based on the segment that is coming through to your website. So if I visit a company's website, my experience might be quite different from yours based on the data that that company has about my preferences, my behaviors, my purchase history. And so it's a way of personalizing the experience so that you can maximize the conversions that happen on your website. All of this is data-driven marketing. When we say data-driven, this is what we mean. And finally, simple cross-selling and upselling. And we've all talked about this, and I think the travel industry knows this pretty well. If somebody just bought an airline ticket, they might want to buy travel insurance. They might want to buy or purchase a car hire or a hotel. You know, there are complementary products and services that you can push to specific individuals based on your knowledge of their purchase history and when they purchase. I'm almost there. So I'm going to wrap this into one simple sort of journey to ticket purchase to show you what we mean. I've got a prospect and I'm an airline. If I can click. But I don't know much about this prospect. I just know that they visit my website. Right. Because I have a data layer on my website, I'm already collecting and I understand a lot of insights about this prospect. They opened the last email that I sent them, the newsletter, where I had a Maldives offer on there, and they clicked on it. They went to the website, they browsed through, we saw that they were looking at Maldives options, but they did not purchase. They abandoned it. They also, while they were on the website, consumed video content, right? I already know this from my first-party data, and that might be a pretty reasonable, complete picture about that individual, but let's go in a bit deeper. I also know from TripAdvisor that I can match my cookies with their data and insights. And on TripAdvisor, it just so happens that a week ago, this same individual searched for hotels, the best hotels in the Maldives. Now that's quite complementary to my understanding of what this consumer is doing. Then I go to third-party data aggregators, companies like Effective Measure, Exalate. These are companies, remember, that are in the business of aggregating and packaging data, and I start to get further insights into this individual. Now I know that he's male. I know that he's in a high salary bracket, so he's probably a pretty high-ranking sort of professional, and that he's a frequent traveler based on the category behaviors that they track on them. So I pull all this data together, and I create a very specific prospect. And the fun part about this is I don't have to wait for that prospect to come back to my website. I can find them on Google, I'll find them on Facebook, I'll find them across BBC, Financial Times, any website out there where there's addressable targeting. I can now start to buy that audience rather than buying that website. And so it's a much more granular, sophisticated way that gives you better results. And of course, the ad that I deliver might be something that's related to the Maldives. This is about relevance, and this is what we're all about. And it works. And I'll just quickly go through this with a couple examples. We worked with a travel client that was trying to find in-market travel buyers. And what they used to do is they used to buy ads on travel websites. It kind of makes sense. It's contextual. The problem is that actually these travel websites, when we analyze the data, were giving us below the index for the average, which means that we could have just put ads on any random website and we probably would have done a better job at finding in-market travelers. So instead, they went down the first-party data route, they layered it with some third-party data, and they were able to ensure that by buying audiences rather than buying websites, they were instead able to index much higher to ensure that their messages were reaching people who are in market to buy. Another quick example, budget hotel chain who operates on very thin margins wanted to improve their marketing costs per sale. By using data, first-party data in this instance, and buying those audiences programmatically across millions of different websites, they were able to reduce their cost per sale by $43 down to $60. It's a 63% jump of improvement in cost efficiencies just by using their own data to fuel their marketing decisioning. So, final. What are we doing? You're using the combined power of first, second, and third party to fuel your marketing strategies. But it starts with your first-party data. Your first-party data is the foundation. Second, how do you get on the pathway towards this? You start with the data layer. Capture all the data, the interactions across your owned assets, and organize them effectively. And finally, use that data to supercharge your analytics and to supercharge your remarketing capabilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Dimitri. Fascinating stuff looking at data. We're overrunning a little bit, but we do have time for questions. Who would like to ask a question? Yes, so microphone, gentleman at the back there first, and then there'll be one down the front. So maybe start the gentleman there, and then Mike will come down to you. Yes, do ask a question, please. Yes.
Again, Omar Al-Juraifani, Saudi Arabia. My questions for the marketing issues. We are in Saudi Arabia, we lack of information of the market and we are not yet having, even the company, they don't have that much of information about their client, all these things. How we, such as your company, can cover this gap between unavailability data in the markets and in same times the company, they are not matures in, let's say, storing the data in correct way.
Dimitri, that's for you. You
Is that
use your microphone there and speak
Is
close.
this
Yeah.
working? I found it quite difficult to hear you. I'm not going to lie. Can we summarize the question really quickly?
I think summarize the issue. I think you were saying you don't have that much data available, so how could you actually help the gentleman's
Oh, okay.
company when there isn't that much data? Was that right?
Yeah, it is. There is no much data available in the market, and also there is no data with the company for the client.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, no, I understand. And I try to be as practical in terms of steps on how you would address this. But I think suffice to say that you have a digital presence. That digital presence is collecting data every second of every day. And so you need to start by creating or thinking about having a strategy on what you're going to do with that data. Now, it's great to have consultation from companies that know how to work within that space, that can help you to extract that data and harmonize it so that you can start to make it readily available within your marketing channels.
Yes. But presumably, Dimitri, there's a minimum amount of data we need to start making sense of things, isn't there? So might you actually go into a company like this gentleman's and say, look, we've got to start collecting data before we can start utilizing it?
Yeah.
Might that happen?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think
Okay.
one of the paradigm shifts that we've seen with companies when we talk about data at the heart of their marketing strategies versus the sort of more traditional approaches is that then the first step is how do you start to collect the right data in the right fashion? So you've got a number of, maybe you have an app, maybe you have a website, maybe you have a CRM system. You need to start thinking about all of those sources as potential value for you to collect all that data.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Next question. Yes. Do tell us who you are, where you're from. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Jonathan. I'm here from Dubai.
Hold it very close.
I'm Jonathan, and I live here in Dubai.
Lovely. Thank you.
My question is for John. So, what will the role of travel of travel agents be in the future if it becomes automated?
Yes, that's a good question, John, because I was thinking, you know what? Trip Creator sounds a great tool for travel agents to use. And you showed us every airline under the sun and TripAdvisor and everyone else might be using it. Why do we need travel agents anymore?
I know. I realized after the talk that I failed to mention basically that the solution is not only an online solution. It can work inside your travel agency as a tool for your travel agents. A travel agent that normally would create 3 plans or something like that in an hour could now do 10 plans. So 3 times the plans. You can actually generate templates. So you have 50 or 60 different sort of fixed plans that you can send out as responses to requests to you. And the customer themselves can actually modify that plan and come back to you. So they do a part of the job. So it's not fully automated. They do tell you what you need.
So let me just build on that, John.
So I think I failed to mention that it's not just an online tool. It's actually a tool that experienced travel agents can actually multiply their performance in creating customizable trips for their customers. And in the end, the customer can actually say, it's my trip, I created it, even though you did it for them, because they have a little bit of say in what the end result is.
So travel's still about relationships. That's where travel agents can still score by having good relationships with customers and using tools like Trip Creator to actually make that relationship flow very well and work very well in trip planning.
And I want to thank you for the question because I realized after the talk that I failed to mention how this would actually work inside a travel agency.
Tony, let me ask you a question because that was a fantastic presentation on content. And yet hotel distribution is such a mishmash of airlines trying to sell hotels, OTAs, hotels themselves. Is there an opportunity for hotels on their own websites to perhaps have better content and so win more customers as a result?
For sure. And I think the most important is to aggregate the content on the website with brand.com with any of the OTAs that are out there so that you protect the brand
Okay.
and have your hotel available wherever the traveler searches. So if they search mobile, if they search website, if they search OTA, that you have a brand and an image with content and description, rates and inventory that's consistently branding who you are, and they can access you anywhere in the world with the touch.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, also one last question. Yes, just here. Put your hand up so Natalia can see you. That's right. Just time for one last question. Thank you. Do tell us who you are, where you're from.
My name is Irfan, and we run a travel site called Irhal. It's for the Muslim traveler. I have two comments. One is related to the question that was asked previously. The minimum that anyone already has in terms of information on the customer is an email list. And I think based upon that, we can start doing advertising on Facebook and Twitter and others. With
Okay.
Just the email information alone. That's one. Second thing is related to the pictures that you mentioned. I was in Phuket, Thailand last week, and I was talking to the marketing director of one of the hotels, and they were questioning, like, how do we target the travelers from the Middle East to come to us? And I told them that you already have something in your hotel which will attract them. And that is a spray beside the toilet. Muslim travelers need to wash themselves, and for hygiene purposes, a Muslim shower or a shataf is something which is absolutely essential, and that distinguishes you from another hotel of the same category. I think, like she mentioned,
And you mentioned that bathrooms
the
are the
bathroom-
most
That's
yeah,
popular
awesome.
photo.
I'm going to use that. I will use that. That's
bathroom
awesome.
will be the most important influencer in deciding between one hotel and the next, of course, of the same category.
So, ladies and gentlemen, summing up digital transformation travel, it's all about bathrooms. Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Tony and Dimitri and John very much indeed for a great session.